So this month, the theme that we have been exploring is belonging, feeling like you have a place, like you matter, like people care about you and you're a valued part of the group. So today, I want to talk about one particular thing that has to be in place in any kind of community, including congregations like this one, so that everyone can feel they belong. What I'm talking about is equity. Equity, which is, of course, one of the three components of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And equity can be a little hard to explain. So today I want to start with a story geared to kids because I think it can help all of us really internalize what equity is and why it's important. So I'm going to share with you the story, which is called Fair is Fair. It's by Dr. Lindsey L. Wilson with art by Shiela Alejandro. And we actually have a note handwritten by the author wishing us good service and thanks for doing the work of equity. Okay, so let's dive into our story. Mr. Walker asked, "Class, can anybody tell me what we are learning today?" Everyone yelled, "Fairness!" "Yes," he replied. "We will learn about being fair, but first, everyone must wash their hands before breakfast." Mr. Walker asked during breakfast, "Would it be fair to give everyone a slice of peanut butter toast?" Sean replied, "Yes, that is fair because we all get the same thing." Yasmin said, "No, that is not fair because peanut butter makes Lexi sick. If you give us all the same thing, then Lexi cannot eat breakfast and she will be hungry at school today." Mr. Walker said, "Yasmin, you are right. Lexi is allergic to peanut butter, so it would not be fair to give her the same thing as the rest of the class." Mr. Walker added, "Would it be fair to give Lexi applesauce and crackers for breakfast?" And the entire class yelled, "Yes, that is fair, and fair is fair, isn't it?" Here's Yasmin's dad again, and he says, "What did you learn at school today?" Yasmin said, "I learned that my classroom does have tools to help my friends have a good day. Kevin's audio cables are his tools so that he can hear during computer time. Lexi cannot have peanut butter, so applesauce was her tool. And Sean's weighted blanket is his tool to help him focus." And she raises a question for all of us. She says, "Daddy, you were right. But what is my tool?" That's where the story ends. But I'm going to invite everybody to take just a moment and ask yourself, what do you need to have a good day? Let's just take a couple of breaths and think about that. What do you need to have a good day? So, hey, in the classroom in our story, equity is about making sure everybody has what they need to have a good day. And in just about every kind of community, equity is about making sure everybody actually has what they need, not just to survive, but to thrive and belong. Later on, I'm going to share a few examples of what that could look like in congregations like ours. But for now, let's pause and think a little bit about why that is important. Why is it important that everyone have what they need to thrive and belong? I mean, these days, it's clearly not obvious to everyone, right? We are in a moment where the very idea of equity is being mocked, ignored, and trampled on by our own government. And yet, here, we do believe that everybody should have what they need to thrive and belong. In fact, equity is one of the core values in our own Unitarian Universalist Association statement of values. And in that, value statement, there are some words about why equity is important to us as Unitarian Universalists. I'm going to drop this in the Zoom chat so Zoomers can see, and I'm going to read it out loud. Give me just a moment to access the chat. Hold on, Zoomers. Here we go. Okay, I just dropped it in the chat. So the UUA bylaws say this: we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. So that's in our UUA bylaws. And let's break it down a little bit. We start with a basic principle: everybody is worthy. Everybody is worthy just because they are a person on this earth. Everybody has inherent dignity and has a right to be treated as such, treated with love and compassion. So please note, this is not just a gentle encouragement, like please treat others kindly. This is a declaration that everybody counts and everybody has the right to be treated with dignity and compassion, love, and respect. So according to our UU values, this is a right. This is a right as clear as any of the rights enumerated in our U.S. Constitution. Whoever you are, you have the right to be treated with dignity and compassion. This moral declaration has been at the heart of our faith for a long time. I think this is why we said yes, for example, to hosting the South County Faith Community Shelter for unhoused folks on Saturday nights for the next few months. I think it's why so many of us are working so hard to protect the undocumented members of our community. And I would add that this moral declaration that everyone has the right to be treated with dignity and compassion is not only about the issues we classify as social justice, vital and urgent as they are. It's also about how we are together as a congregation, so that together we can make sure that if you show up here, whether you have been here for 40 years or 40 minutes, you have what you need to thrive and belong right here. So that's why our UU value statement calls us not only to social justice work in our larger community, but also to work within the community to make sure that we are fully accessible and inclusive. So we're going to talk just a little bit today about accessibility and inclusion, which are two critical components of equity. And right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about accessibility. And this is where I want to sing your praises, because I see this congregation doing a lot to make sure that this congregation is accessible so that people with disabilities can participate easily, just like everybody else. So let me give you a few examples of what I see. One example: decades ago, you decided to build a one-story building, which is accessible to people who use wheelchairs or can't climb stairs. That was a choice. You made that choice. More recently, you have worked with our Zoom congregation as an equally valued part of the worshiping community here, not just as an afterthought, so that people who can't leave their homes, or people who are sick, or people who happen to live in Virginia can still show up and participate. Another thing I notice is that you include and integrate congregants with cognitive challenges so they can show up and be part of the community with all their gifts. So is there more that we could do to promote accessibility? Of course, always. If you have suggestions about how we could do better around accessibility issues, please let me know, or please let a board member know. We would like to know. But I do want to say this is a big strength I see in you, all that you're already doing, and your fundamental willingness to do more once you see that it is needed, so that everybody can belong here and everybody can thrive. So I'm going to set things down here for a moment. And in a little bit, I'm going to come back and share some ideas about the other piece of the equity puzzle, inclusion. Hi again. So I wanted to come back and share just a little bit more about our topic of equity. And again, equity is about when everybody has what they need to thrive and to belong. So we've already talked a little bit about accessibility, which is one way we can make sure that everybody has what we need. And now I want to talk briefly about the other piece of the equity puzzle, which is inclusion. So let's get a little nerdy and talk about a definition of inclusion. There are a lot of definitions out there, but for today, I want to offer this one. Inclusion is when people with marginalized identities, and that includes but is not limited to people of color and queer folks, people with marginalized identities consistently have the experience of feeling that they belong, feeling valued and empowered, feeling like they matter. When that's present, we are seeing inclusion. So as a cishet white woman, I am not the most qualified person to speak about the experience of people of color and queer people in our congregation. But today, I want to share a bit about another kind of marginalized identity, which I do have a fair bit of experience with, and that is neurodivergence. Neurodivergence is when somebody's brain works differently from how it is with the majority of people. For example, ADHD is a type of neurodivergence. Autism is another. And today I want to share with you about the kind that I know best, being highly sensitive. So when I'm not here serving with you all, I also have an independent ministry working with clergy and other folks who identify as what we call highly sensitive people. And in case you've never heard of that, being highly sensitive is a very normal psychological trait. About 20% of human persons around the world and across genders are highly sensitive. And what does that mean? If you are a highly sensitive person, what it means is that you probably feel things pretty deeply. You process just about everything, things going on in the world, things coming at you through your senses. You take in everything and process it more intensely than most people. As a highly sensitive person, you probably notice lots of small details about what's happening around you. And you're probably very compassionate. When other people around you are hurting, you tend to take in that pain and feel it as if it were your own. So because of all this, highly sensitive people tend to get more overstimulated and overwhelmed more easily than most people. And because of that, they tend to need a lot more downtime than other people, like quiet time just to process the day. And if they can't get that quiet alone time, they're prone to chronic exhaustion, like all the time. So being highly sensitive is a brain thing. But because this trait was only discovered about 30 years ago, most people don't know much about it, if indeed they've ever even heard of it. So in congregations, this is not even so much of a marginalized identity as a nearly unknown, invisible identity, but it is one that really impacts how people function as folks in a congregational system. I personally discovered that I was highly sensitive a few years back, and I can tell you that most of us folks who identify as highly sensitive grew up being told that we were too sensitive. And so we tend to carry around a lot of shame around our needs to be thriving and well in the world. Until and unless we've done some work around healing, highly sensitive people tend to feel like who we are in the world is somehow a problem or an inconvenience for others, like there is something fundamentally wrong with us. quick example, the first year that I was serving a congregation, this is way, way back, I discovered that I could not function if I did not take 2 days off every week, which at the time was very unusual. I did what I needed to do. I took those days off, but for a long time, I felt like there was something wrong with me, like I was not tough enough to hack it as like a real legit minister person. Now I know that being highly sensitive is actually a huge asset for congregational life. For example, highly sensitive people tend to be really great at pastoral care. They also tend to be those folks in congregations for whom spirituality and spiritual practices are really core to their identity. So we need these folks in our congregations. But congregational life also comes with some predictable challenges for highly sensitive people who take on volunteer roles or staff roles. For example, it's easy for us to just get overwhelmed by there's always too much to do, there's never enough resources, and the sheer volume of need that we see in the world is just so great. So that's overwhelming for highly sensitive folks, or it can be. Another thing that can be really tough is feeling everybody else's emotions, especially when you're in the middle of a conflict with lots of anger and frustration flying around all over the place. The emotions are not the problem, I should be clear. The issue is that it's hard for highly sensitive people to feel all those emotions and not take them in too deeply. So today, having said all that, part of what I do these days in my other ministry is to help other highly sensitive clergy find ways to get their needs met while they are handling all the normal tasks of congregational life. Like, for example, deliberately taking breaks throughout the day so they can go be in a quiet spot, be there by themselves for just a bit. For most highly sensitive people, this is the most refreshing thing that they can do. And it doesn't mean that we don't love you. We just need a little bit of time to kind of catch up and regroup. So for today, I could go on and on, but for today, I want to quick connect the dots back to this principle of inclusion. For highly sensitive people, it is just so helpful when congregations understand that we're going to need some things that aren't necessarily what the majority needs. And in return, we're going to bring some really great gifts to the table. It is so amazing when congregations understand that and don't judge their highly sensitive people because our brains work a little differently from other people's. And by the way, I want to just be clear that, of course, there are a lot of people in our congregations who are neurodivergent in other ways. People with autism, people with ADHD, and or anybody whose brain works differently from the majority. All of those folks are going to be bringing in different gifts that are valuable and precious, and they also may need different things from their communities. So I would love to see all of our congregations across the country get much more openly and explicitly, skillfully welcoming to folks who are neurodivergent so that nobody has to feel ashamed or like they have to feel apologetic about how their brain works. So I'm going to bring this to a close now. And I just want to invite us to think about, to remember why inclusion and accessibility and equity are so important. What is the why here? Ultimately, I think this is about doing our part in building a whole world where everybody belongs, where everybody can thrive, where everybody is treated with dignity, love, and compassion. So where the reality of life on earth, which we know is still so hard for so many, when the reality of life on earth gets just a little closer to that beautiful vision of universal love and flourishing that we have not given up on, that we glimpse even now in the longings of our own hearts. May it be so, and may we be the ones to make it so. Amen. And would you